So it's the evolving context of Northeast Asia that is perhaps in some ways the greatest challenge that we face, plus the fact that dealing with North Korea in an American political context is very, very difficult. And no administration has really done it well. I would argue even that the Clinton administration did not do it well, even when we signed the agreed framework. We signed the agreed framework, and immediately the Republicans regained control of the Congress 3 weeks later, and the North Korean agreed framework was immediately a political orphan. And we invested very little in trying to make it a success. It actually wasn't bad. It worked fairly well for about 8 years. The Bush administration came into office determined that they were going to reverse the semi-successful policies of the Clinton administration in terms of resuming dialogue with the North, and did so. The agreed framework survived a little bit more than 1 year under the Bush administration. In the second Bush term, it became clear to the people, the same people who had not, most of the same people who had hated the agreed framework, that somehow you had to deal with North Korea. So Secretary Rice put a lot of effort, in some ways successfully, into resuscitating engagement with the North Koreans. President Obama came into office convinced that we could sort of pick up the baton from where the North Koreans and the Bush administration had left it and move on to try to deepen engagement. That proved to be not possible, largely because, for reasons that are still not clear, the North Koreans decided that they were going to stake out a new position. They were going to become more aggressive, more assertive. So they had a nuclear test, they had a long-range missile test, and they engaged in some very nasty rhetoric, not only at us, but more importantly in some ways at the South Koreans. China exists in this tension constantly between the nuclear problem and their geopolitical conviction that their national interest is best served by the continued existence of North Korea. So they fear that if they begin to back away from North Korea or put too much pressure on North Korea, that it could bring about the collapse of North Korea. And I think that one of China's worst nightmares is the notion that they will wake up some morning and the Korean Peninsula will have been reunified according to the South Korean model and with a military relationship with the United States. That, from their point of view, would be a severe deterioration in what Henry Kissinger calls the correlation of forces. So they don't want that to happen either. So they're constantly in this dilemma of too much pressure could bring about a serious problem, too little pressure could cause the North Koreans to move ahead. But they do want North Korea to continue to exist as a nation state. And that's just fundamental. Now, we think that that's bizarre, and we think that North Korea's continued existence, from our point of view, we don't care that much. I mean, we recognize that there would be serious consequences, and even South Korea recognizes that. But the continued existence of North Korea is not an article of faith in the American polity. So we have a divergence here, and we think that if the Chinese just press them, because 80% of their trade is with China. So if the Chinese really were serious about denuclearization, they could cause the North Koreans to change, to do things. Well, first of all Koreans, South and North, have 3,000-year history of resisting Chinese pressure on just about everything you can think of. And secondly, there is this tension in the Chinese approach. They don't want North Korea to collapse. So we think the North Koreans must have a lot of influence over North Korea. I'm persuaded that China has more influence than they admit to, but far less than we believe they should have.